Hello, and welcome to Wellness Chats with Dr. Ifill-Taylor. I'm excited that we've changed the name of the podcast. It used to be All That's Well, and that applies as well. We sort of expanded the scope of this podcast to include everything that affects our wellness, our mental, physical, and spiritual health. We've always been about that, but we've had so much impact us since this podcast started that I wanted to make sure to be able to have some broad topics for our discussion and for our consideration. Our mental, physical, and spiritual health are impacted by what we experience through our senses, take into our bodies, habits we have or don't have, and they are definitely affected by our immediate environment, our homes and workspaces, and by the health of our communities and the country and the world. Wellness chats are meant to, from this podcast, are meant to present to you informative discussion that may aid in your wellness journey. This podcast continues to support the Wellness Center 3-Strand Wellness in Charlotte, North Carolina, of which I'm the founder. If you're new to the podcast, I'll introduce myself again. My name is Dr. Darlene Ifill-Taylor. I am a psychiatrist, physician, a Duke-trained wellness coach, a gardener, a mother, a wife, a pretty great cook, and I treat patients for mental issues, emotional wellness, and their families and marriages. And I'm also a psychotherapist. And I have a particular interest in having us focus on the integration of our mental, physical, and spiritual health for our total wellness. 3-Strand Wellness is located right in the heart of Charlotte, North Carolina, in the section of the city called Plaza Midwood. And we are providing presently telehealth sessions for emotional health, physical fitness, yoga and meditation, and nutrition during COVID-19. We have discontinued, for the moment, massage therapy because of COVID. And we will reopen with massage therapy, and we will reopen our beautiful offices when the science supports that. It's the same podcast, but a little bit more expansive, and it's easier to find because now you just have to put in my name, Darlene Ifill-Taylor, and it will take you to us. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts or any place that you listen to podcasts. And if you have just started listening to podcasts, you pretty much can find us anywhere there if you just go ahead and put in my name. So now on to today. Today, my co-discussant is Dr. Olivia Lynch. She is an educator of over 20 years who's taught in the classroom, developed programs for effective education of our youth, and she's been an education researcher. Her paper, If They'd Only Do Their Work, which she co-authored with Linda Darling-Hammond, helps to explain the underlying reasons why some students struggle to succeed. And it's a wonderful read, and if you would like it, you should download it and read. She currently is an independent educational consultant in California and has a very strong perspective about our educational system in general. Today, I'm honored to talk with her about our back-to-school efforts this school year during COVID-19. And this episode is called Back to School 2020, an educator's perspective on teachers, parents, and our children during COVID-19. Welcome, Dr. Olivia Lynch.
Hi, Dr. Ifill-Taylor. Hi, Darlene. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I don't like to take the doctor away from anybody's name, so I'll go back and forth between Dr. Lynch and Olivia.
Okay.
It's a lot of work. It's a tough subject that we have today. I know here in North Carolina, schools open on Monday. Many schools have opened already. From the standpoint of my patients, I've had students going back to college who have already left for college. I have students who are going to private school where it looks like the plan is a little bit more fluid, more flexible, more considering things. And then, of course, the majority going back to public school. And you have, over the years, 20 to 30 years, focused on the education of our students. And so have perspectives from the educator standpoint, but also parents and students alike. So can we just start by, I'm just going to ask the question that is the thing that we really want to know. Not that any of us has the answer, but I'd love your perspective on what should we be doing this school year. This is our first time, certainly in our lifetimes, where we've had to deal with something like this, pandemic. Children are affected and do become carriers, and sometimes asymptomatic carriers of COVID-19. In some states, teachers are being mandated back to the classroom. Some teachers have felt the need to quit their jobs as a result. It's kind of a mess. Share your thoughts, please.
Well, obviously, this is a topic of great concern. I would say the first thing is the safety of everyone, the students,
mm-hmm.
the teachers, and the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so any decisions that are made about school have to be nested in what is the safest way to
mm-hmm.
open school, that those who are learning and those who are teaching can maintain their health.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the first consideration.
Sure.
And so around May and June, I would say May, I was really concerned because schools closed in March.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that time, I decided I would begin to interview teachers and find out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed all the way from the beginning, this is why after saying the safety, the second thing I'm going to say is the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have an article that's going to be published next week
mm-hmm.
that I just want to read the opening paragraph, and then I will answer your question a little bit more.
Sure.
Almost like a dystopian dawn, many students and teachers across the country awakened in March 2020 to a new reality of schools and schooling. Schools as buildings and institutions had suddenly vanished. Teaching and learning had changed overnight into a virtual two-dimensional space. All that remained and was familiar were the essential elements of education, the teacher and the student. No longer was proximity possible. The sacred places, the school and classroom, had disappeared. And I open with that because that is the reality of schools, is the teacher and the student. And in the interviews with the teachers that I can go into if you want to later, ask me some questions about that, it was all up to them. Just to give you some scenarios, most teachers were not told until a week before schools closed, a day before school closed.
Right.
Some teachers heard on a Thursday that school may close on Friday. One teacher ran down to the supply room, and before her students left on that Thursday, she gave each of them, an art teacher, a box of crayons, and she had bought some sketchbooks that she was going to use at a later time. She gave one to each of them
mm-hmm.
because she knew something was coming, although it was not announced.
Sure.
Some teachers had 1 hour to prepare. They were pulled into a room, told to go back to their classroom and prepare 2 weeks of lessons and post it on the school's website.
Wow.
So everything was up to the teachers. Everything was up to the teachers, and everything is still up to the teachers. And I think that that's the first thing.
Yes.
The second person that things are up to are the parents in terms of how they're going to create school in their homes and how they're going to support that and what they're going to need to do that.
Yes.
So I would say those are the first two things. And I would have liked, and I would have thought that the summer months would have been for schools that open in August, which happens in many schools here in California, and in the South, where, in Mississippi, where schools open in July, then it would have been June. And in the East Coast, where they open in September, then it would have been August, that there would be really deep professional learning for teachers. And
Absolutely.
There has been some, but not the quality that actually could be produced if it was organized.
That's right.
What instead happened, instead of the voices of teachers, when we turn on the television to hear about schools, the conversation about opening, closing schools is dominated by politicians,
right.
by bureaucrats, by people who would never be in a situation where they had to make sure a child learned.
Right.
So because of that, we don't get the true story of what's needed. And then the article that I wrote is called Scholarship, Compassion, and COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's called Scholarship and Compassion is because those are the two key elements that the teacher has to have in order to successfully navigate this.
Right, that every good teacher brings, even in the classroom setting. And so how could it be that we don't need it outside of the classroom setting when we move to something like this during a pandemic?
But I think that we have failed to recognize that in the classroom. We think that if we just tell teachers that things will happen for children, instead of ensuring that teachers are capacitated to deliver the education that the children need.
Sure.
And also that teachers are consulted. So,
yes.
Given, especially from my interviews, the teachers have a lot to say, a lot to share about their experiences and what would work, their concerns, their well-being, and that is not at the forefront. That is not on the headline.
Yes.
Only as a political thing where a union may say, no, we don't think it's a good idea. But that is to, how are we going to deliver this in ways that children can really learn?
Yes. I hear, how impassioned you are about it. And I wanted to do this podcast subject because I have certainly heard from so many teachers who are sick at heart about this, and I've heard from many parents who are sick at heart about it, and as it should be the case when it comes to our children. If we can't deliver compassionate care there, where can we do it? And so one of the concerns, and myself as a scientist, my concern has been the thing that you've brought up, and that is that it feels as though the political units and bureaucracy are making, and they're the decision makers. We certainly understand that, but they're making decisions about something that is this vital to our, to the health of our children and our teachers, who we literally rely upon to, partially raise our children, at least in the classroom space. I don't hear any reference to teachers being at jeopardy. I don't hear. This. So from my standpoint, we now know, and I've certainly known from the beginning of this, that children can become infected with COVID-19. So and can be asymptomatic carriers. So what are we doing to address the safety of children with their teachers, and teachers going home to their families, and children going home to their families, many of which have elderly, grandparents, et cetera, in the home? Just saying we have to get back to school, we have to open schools, it just doesn't sound very compassionate to me. And I wondered why there is not some sort of, it's late now, right? We could have done this. You brought up May. The entire summer could have been in planning for the school year. Why can the school year not start a month later so that planning and teaching and orienting of students and parents and teachers could happen? So
we didn't do it. We just didn't do it. We didn't do it as a political